Ethan never thought life would bring him something so strange, so unexpected, and so impossible to explain to his family. He was just an ordinary student, living in a small city apartment, working part-time jobs, and trying to keep his grades above the passing line. Nothing in his daily routine ever suggested that one day he would live with someone not from Earth. Yet when the Galactic Exchange Program sent him a letter, his entire life turned upside down. At first he thought it was a scam. Live with an alien roommate and exchange cultural knowledge? The words sounded like science fiction, but weeks later, when a transport shuttle landed quietly on the campus lawn, and a tall figure stepped down with silver skin that shimmered like moonlight, Ethan realized this was real. The alien had a name, Liara. She carried herself with grace, her eyes glowing faintly, reflecting the sunlight like pools of liquid crystal. She was unlike anything he had ever seen, yet there was something gentle in her presence. The first week was nothing less than chaos. Ethan tried to show her how to use a microwave, and she nearly short-circuited it by placing a metal cup inside. Liara, in return, tried to introduce him to her form of meditation, which involved humming vibrations that made the walls of the apartment shake so violently that the neighbor came knocking, furious. They argued about the simplest things: when to sleep, how to keep the room warm, and why human food smelled so strong to her sensitive senses. But slowly something shifted. They began to laugh at their mistakes. Ethan taught her how to use chopsticks by ordering noodles from the cheapest restaurant in town, and Liara, though clumsy at first, eventually managed to pick up a single piece of vegetable. When she did, she looked at him with such pride, as if she had solved one of the universe's biggest mysteries. In return, she shared pieces of her own culture. She sang for him, not with words, but with vibrations deep in her chest. The sound wasn't just heard, it was felt. It resonated through the walls, the floor, even inside Ethan's bones. It made him close his eyes and feel as though he was standing beneath stars far away from Earth. What began as awkward cohabitation turned into something more like friendship. Ethan no longer saw her as the alien. She became Liara, his roommate, his companion, the one who sat with him through late-night study sessions and reminded him to drink water when he forgot. And in return, she learned to accept his human flaws, his endless questions, and his habit of oversleeping. Life became a rhythm. Two worlds colliding in a tiny apartment, finding balance one day at a time. But one evening, something shifted. Ethan returned from class to find Liara sitting on the couch, her tablet glowing in her hands. Her eyes were wide, her expression unreadable. She was reading something deeply, almost devouring every word. Ethan dropped his bag on the floor and asked, "What's caught your attention this time?" She didn't look up. Instead, she whispered, "Human biology." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "That's a broad subject. Anything specific?" Finally, she turned her head toward him, her glass-like eyes reflecting the screen's light. "Reproduction," she said softly. "It is not like ours." Ethan froze for a moment, unsure how to respond. "Well, yeah, I guess it's different for every species, right?" But Liara shook her head. Her voice carried something more than curiosity. It carried confusion, maybe even sorrow. "You risk pain, you risk loss, for something so fragile. Why?" Her words pierced him. He had never thought about it that way. To him, reproduction, love, and family were simply part of human life. Yes, there was pain and risk, but there was also beauty. How could he explain that to someone who had never known it? Ethan sat beside her, noticing how she leaned closer, her face filled with quiet wonder. She wasn't just studying facts, she was searching for meaning. Something about this subject touched her in a way other human lessons never had. In that moment, Ethan realized, This wasn't just about science for Liara. It was the beginning of a question much larger, one that would change the way they saw each other forever. Liara could not let it go. After that evening, she began to ask Ethan more and more questions, each one sharper, deeper, and harder to answer. What started as curiosity about biology soon turned into something far greater, something Ethan felt unprepared to explain. "Why?" she asked one night, her voice calm but full of genuine confusion. "Do humans suffer to bring life into existence? My people create life through harmony. There is no blood, no screaming, no danger. But here, every text says the mother risks death. Why?" Ethan placed his notebook down, staring at her glowing eyes. He didn't know how to put into words something that was more than science. "Because," he said slowly, "life is worth the pain. Parents, they believe their children are worth any risk. It's love." Liara tilted her head, studying him carefully. "Love, I see this word often. You humans speak of it as if it is more powerful than logic, more powerful than survival. But what is it really?" The question made Ethan pause. He wanted to laugh, to brush it off with a joke, but the way she looked at him made it impossible. She wasn't teasing him. She truly wanted to know. "Love," he said at last, "is when someone matters to you more than yourself. It's when you would give up comfort, even your life, to protect them. It doesn't always make sense, but it feels right." Liara's lips parted slightly as if she wanted to argue, but no words came. She turned back to her tablet, staring at the diagrams of human families, of mothers holding newborns. The light from the screen reflected on her silver skin, and for a moment Ethan thought she looked almost human in her silence. The next few days she was quieter than usual. She still hummed during meditation, still sat with him during meals, but her mind was elsewhere. Ethan often caught her gazing out the window, watching humans walk on the streets below, couples holding hands, families carrying groceries, children chasing each other with laughter. She seemed to study them as though they were part of a grand mystery. One afternoon, as they shared dinner, Liara finally broke the silence. "Ethan, do humans always form pairs? Do they always stay loyal to one another even when life is heavy?" He chewed slowly before answering. "Not always. Some do, some don't. But the ones who stay, they do it because of love." Liara tapped her long fingers against the table. "Where I come from, bonds are practical. We connect for balance, for growth, for continuation of our kind. But here," she hesitated, lowering her voice, "here, you give parts of yourselves away without guarantee. You make yourselves vulnerable, and yet you call it strength. That confuses me." Ethan smiled faintly. "That's what makes us human, I guess. We risk being broken, but it's worth it for the moments we find real connection." Her eyes lingered on him, searching his face for something he couldn't name. For the first time, Ethan felt a strange heaviness in his chest. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. She was feeling something. Something new, maybe even dangerous, growing between them. Later that night, Ethan sat at his desk pretending to study, but his mind replayed her words. Vulnerability, connection, love. He glanced over his shoulder and saw Liara curled on the couch, her tablet still in her hands, though her eyes were distant, lost in thought. She wasn't reading anymore. She was feeling. Ethan wondered what it must be like for her, an alien who had never known human love, trying to understand why people would suffer for it, why they would die for it. And then a deeper thought came, to him. What if she wanted to feel it herself? The idea unsettled him, but it also made his heart race in a way he didn't want to admit. When Liara finally looked up from the couch, her voice was quiet but steady. "Ethan, one day will you show me what it means? Not with words, not with books, but with you?" The air between them grew still, heavy and full of something unspoken. Ethan's breath caught, and for a moment he couldn't find his voice. He saw no mockery in her eyes, only pure, unshaken curiosity, mixed with something warmer, something that looked very close to longing. In that silence, Ethan realized that his life with Liara had already begun to change, and he knew it was only the beginning. The question Liara had asked that night never left Ethan's mind. "One day, will you show me what it means?" The words replayed again and again, sometimes when he was awake, sometimes even in his dreams. He tried to bury them, to focus on school, on work, on anything but the glowing alien who shared his apartment. But no matter how hard he tried, Liara's presence always pulled him back. She too had changed. Her curiosity was no longer only about Earth or human culture. It was about him. She watched the way he spoke to strangers, the way he smiled when he heard music, the way his hands trembled when he was tired but still pushed himself to finish an assignment. Her luminous eyes followed every detail as if he was the subject of a study far more important than any book. One evening, Ethan returned home to find Liara sitting cross-legged on the floor, her tablet glowing faintly beside her. But she wasn't reading. Instead, she was watching a small video on the screen, an image of a mother holding her baby, tears streaming down her face, whispering words of comfort. Liara's voice broke the silence. "Ethan, why do humans cry when they are happy? My people shed no tears. We have joy, but it is silent. This overflow of feeling, it is strange." Ethan sat down beside her. "Sometimes emotions are too strong for words. Tears. They're like the body's way of letting it all out. Happiness, sadness, love, they all can make us cry." She nodded slowly, but her eyes lingered on him, full of thought. "If love makes you cry, is it not dangerous? Would it not weaken you?" Ethan chuckled softly, shaking his head. "No, it makes us stronger, because it reminds us we're alive, that we care. Love isn't weakness, Liara. It's what gives people strength to face everything else." Her fingers brushed lightly against the screen, but then, without warning, she reached for his hand. The contact was gentle, almost unsure, but her touch carried warmth he didn't expect. Ethan stiffened for a moment, his heart thundering in his chest. "Is this how humans connect?" she asked, tilting her head. "Yes," Ethan whispered. "Holding hands. It means closeness, comfort, sometimes more." Liara's silver skin glowed faintly under the room's dim light. "It feels steadying," she murmured. "I can sense your pulse, your life, so fragile and yet so persistent." She looked up at him with an expression that nearly stole his breath. "I want to understand more." Ethan pulled his hand back suddenly, his chest tightening. He stood quickly, pacing the room. "Liara, you can't just treat this like an experiment. Feelings aren't something you study in a lab. They're real, they hurt, they change people." Liara blinked, taken aback by the sharpness in his voice. For the first time since she arrived, she looked almost hurt. "I did not mean to offend," she said softly. "I only seek to learn. But perhaps I have crossed a line." The tension in the room was heavy. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, guilt washing over him. She wasn't trying to be cruel, she was trying to understand. And maybe, just maybe, she already felt more than she realized. The days that followed carried a strange silence between them. Liara still asked questions, but her tone was softer, almost hesitant. Ethan caught her looking at him when she thought he wasn't watching, and each time his chest tightened. One night, unable to hold it in, Ethan finally spoke. "Liara, this thing you're asking about, this love, it isn't something you can just demand to see. It grows. Slowly. between people who trust each other. She studied him quietly, her luminous eyes searching. "Do you trust me, Ethan?" The question struck him harder than he expected. After a pause, he whispered, "Yes, I do." Liara moved closer, her voice low and steady. "Then let it grow. Do not fear it. If it hurts, I will share the hurt. If it strengthens, I will share the strength. That is what I want to understand." Her words left Ethan speechless. He wanted to push her away, to remind her she was from another world, another life entirely. But deep down he knew the truth. Something was already growing between them. Something neither of them could stop. And as Ethan lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling while Liara's soft humming filled the air, he realized the boundaries between human and alien were beginning to blur, and once they did, there would be no going back. The silence between them did not last forever. It never could. Living together in such a small space meant that every look, every word, every pause carried weight. Ethan could feel it building like a storm, something unspoken between them growing heavier each day. It happened one evening when rain pounded hard against the window. Ethan was sitting at the desk, trying to write a paper, but his thoughts refused to settle. Liara was across the room, humming faintly in her meditative rhythm. The sound, usually calming, only made his chest ache more tonight. Finally, she stopped, her glowing eyes fixed on him, and she asked in a quiet voice, "Why do you avoid me now, Ethan? You speak less. You laugh less. Is it because I ask too much?" Her words hit him like a knife. He turned in his chair, searching for an answer. "It's not that. It's just complicated." "Complicated," she repeated, tasting the word. "Is that another human way of saying you are afraid?" Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Maybe, yes, afraid of what this means. Afraid of where it could go. You're not human, Liara. You don't know how dangerous these feelings can be." Her expression softened, but her voice carried a quiet strength. "Dangerous? Or meaningful? You speak of love as if it is both pain and power. Then why should I not want to feel it?" Ethan stood, his emotions boiling. "Because it's not simple. Love changes everything. Once you let it in, you can't go back. It's not a game, it's not an experiment, it's real. And if you don't understand that, you'll get hurt, or worse, I will." Liara rose slowly to her feet, her tall figure casting a shadow in the dim light. She stepped closer, her voice trembling but determined. "You think I cannot be hurt? Ethan, I crossed light years to come to this world. I live in a body that is not made for your air, your food, your noise. Every day here is a risk, and yet I stay.
Do you not see?
I am already vulnerable. But with you, I do not feel weak. I feel alive." Her words made his heart pound, but fear still clung to him. "Liara, if this goes wrong, I'll lose you, and I don't think I could handle that." For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of rain filled the silence, broken only by the faint hum of the city outside. Finally, Liara reached out and placed her hand on his chest, directly over his heart. He froze as her cool silver fingers pressed gently against his shirt. "This," she whispered. "This rhythm. It is fragile. It could stop at any moment. And yet you carry on, giving it to others, letting it guide you. That is what makes you human. And that is what I want to share." Ethan closed his eyes, his breath unsteady. Every part of him wanted to surrender, to let the warmth of her words pull him in. But fear still battled inside him, fear of what they were becoming. "Liara," he whispered, "you don't understand the cost." Her eyes shone brighter, almost like stars. "Then let me learn. Even if it cost. I would rather know love and loss than live forever without it." The honesty in her voice shattered something inside him. For so long he had tried to draw lines, to keep her at a distance, but in that moment he saw the truth. Liara wasn't just curious. She wasn't studying him like a subject. She was reaching for something real. His throat tightened. Words failed him. He only knew one thing. Whatever happened next, their lives would never return to what they had been before. That night, as the rain softened into a quiet drizzle, Ethan lay awake once more. Liara rested on the couch, her breathing calm, her silver skin glimmering in the faint light. He stared at the ceiling, his heart torn between fear and longing. The boundaries were gone. And in their place stood something far more terrifying, and far more beautiful. Days after the night of rain, life between Ethan and Liara seemed different. The air felt heavier, charged with unspoken words. They no longer moved like simple roommates. Every glance lasted longer than it should. Every touch carried weight. Ethan tried to distract himself with his studies, but even while reading lines of text, he felt her presence behind him, watching quietly, feeling quietly. One afternoon, the knock on their door changed everything. When Ethan opened it, two figures stood in the hallway, representatives from the Galactic Exchange Program. Their dark uniforms carried authority, their eyes sharp and unreadable. Liara froze the moment she saw them. Liara of the Vayari. One of them spoke firmly. "Your time here has exceeded the observation limit. You must return with us to the central station for review." Ethan's chest tightened. "Wait, what? No one told us she'd be taken away so suddenly." The taller representative turned to him with a cold look. Her assignment was to observe, not to become entangled. "We have received reports. Her studies have gone beyond expectations. This bond you share is not permitted." Liara stepped forward, her voice calm but strong. "I have done nothing wrong. I have only learned. That is the purpose of the program." But the other shook his head. "You have crossed boundaries. Emotional ties with a human are forbidden. It compromises the purity of exchange." The word stung Ethan like a blade. Forbidden. As if everything they had shared was nothing more than a mistake. He clenched his fists, anger boiling inside him. "She's not some experiment. She's my friend." He stopped himself, the word catching in his throat, almost replaced by something deeper. Liara's eyes flicked toward him, glowing brighter, then back to the officials. "I will not go," she said simply. The room went still. The representatives exchanged glances. "If you resist, Liara, you risk banishment from the program, even exile from Vayari society. Are you prepared for that?" For a moment, Ethan thought she might falter. But then she straightened, her silver skin shimmering with resolve. "If understanding humans is a crime, then I will bear it." Ethan's chest swelled with both pride and fear. He stepped beside her, his voice shaking but steady. "If you take her, you'll have to take me too." The officials stared at him, their expressions unreadable. After a long silence, one finally spoke. "Very well. The choice is yours. But understand, Liara, you may never be welcomed home again." Without another word, they turned and left, their footsteps echoing down the hall. The door shut. Silence filled the room. Ethan's heart pounded like a drum. Slowly, he turned to Liara. "You didn't have to do that. You didn't have to risk everything." Liara's gaze locked with his, her voice trembling just enough to betray the storm inside her. "Ethan, when I first came here, I thought I was only here to learn, to observe. But the more I watched, the more I felt. And now, I cannot imagine leaving without knowing what it truly means to be human. Without knowing what it truly means to love." The last word hung in the air like fire. Ethan swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Liara." She stepped closer, her hand reaching for his once again. "I have already chosen, Ethan. I choose to stay. Not for the program, not for science, for you." The weight of her words pressed deep into him, breaking down the last walls he had tried to build. He squeezed her hand, his voice low but firm. "Then I'll stay with you too, whatever it costs." For the first time since they met, Ethan saw something new in her glowing eyes. Not just curiosity, not just wonder, but devotion. Something fragile and powerful all at once. That night, as they sat together in silence, the storm outside them was no longer just about curiosity or science. It was about survival, choice, and something far more human than either of them had expected. They were no longer just a human and an alien. They were two souls who had chosen each other, even against the universe itself. The morning after the officials left, the apartment felt different. The walls seemed heavier, the air thicker. Ethan sat at the table, staring at his untouched breakfast, while Liara stood by the window, watching the world outside. She had chosen to stay, but the cost of that decision hung over them like a shadow. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "Do you realize what this means, Liara? You might never see your home again." Her silver skin shimmered faintly in the sunlight. "I know," she said softly. "And yet when I think of home, my thoughts are here now. With you." The words made Ethan's chest tighten. He wanted to tell her how much that meant to him, how much she already mattered, but fear held him back. What if saying it out loud only made things harder? Liara turned toward him, her glowing eyes calm but steady. "Do you regret what I chose?" Ethan shook his head slowly. "No, but I'm scared. I don't want you to lose everything because of me." She crossed the room and sat across from him. Her hands folded neatly in her lap, but her voice carried warmth. "Ethan, where I come from, we live in balance. We avoid strong feelings because they create imbalance. But since meeting you, I have learned something new. Balance is not the same as life. Life is risk. Life is feeling, if I lose my people but I gain this, then I have not lost everything. I have found something worth keeping." Her honesty struck him like a wave. He reached across the table and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Then we'll face this together, whatever comes." For the first time in days, Liara smiled. A soft, small smile, but real. In the weeks that followed, the outside world grew harsher. Ethan received warnings from the program. Emails, messages, even visits from human supervisors, all telling him the same thing. This bond is unnatural, dangerous, forbidden. Each time Ethan ignored them, and each time Liara stayed by his side, calm and unshaken. But inside, Ethan wrestled with doubt. At night, when she hummed softly to herself, he lay awake wondering if he had ruined her future. If love was really worth so much sacrifice. One night, unable to sleep, he finally spoke. "Liara, do you ever regret staying?" Her humming stopped. She turned to him, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "No, never. But your people, your world," she interrupted gently. "Ethan, I once thought my people gave me everything. Now I see they gave me nothing compared to this. They gave me knowledge, but not meaning. They gave me harmony, but not heart. You gave me both." Her words stole his breath. For a long time he stared at her, feeling a warmth in his chest that scared him but also filled him with peace. Slowly he reached out and she let him hold her hand again. This time she didn't ask what it meant. She already knew. The next day they faced the city together. For the first time, Liara walked beside him without hiding her luminous eyes, without pulling her hood low. People stared, some whispered, some even crossed the street. Ethan felt anger rise, but Liara squeezed his hand and whispered, "Let them see. I am not ashamed." Her courage made him stand taller, but not everyone was simply curious. That evening, when they returned, they found another message waiting, a final warning. If Liara does not return within one cycle, measures will be taken. Both of you will bear the consequence. Ethan's hands shook as he read the words. He looked at Liara, expecting fear, but she only placed her hand on his shoulder, her voice steady. "Then we will face them. Together." In that moment, Ethan realized something he hadn't before. Love wasn't just about choosing each other in quiet moments. It was about standing together when the whole world stood against them. That night, as Liara hummed softly beside him, Ethan finally whispered the words he had been afraid to say. "I love you." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Liara's glowing eyes turned to him, soft and bright. "Then now I understand, and I love you too." The weight of those words melted the fear inside him. Whatever came next, banishment, punishment, exile, they would face it side by side, because they were no longer just human and alien. They were something greater, something worth every cost. The final warning came not with words but with action. One morning, The sky above the city cracked open with light as a ship descended silently, casting shadows over the streets. Ethan and Liara watched from their apartment window as people below pointed and whispered in fear. This was no visit, no negotiation. This was a command. Moments later, the door to their apartment rattled with a firm knock. When Ethan opened it, the same officials stood there, their dark uniforms even more imposing. "It is time," one of them said coldly. "Liara must return. You have both ignored every warning. There are no more chances." Ethan's stomach tightened. He looked at Liara. She stood tall, her silver skin glowing faintly, her eyes steady. "I will not leave," she said firmly. The official's expression hardened. "Then you force our hand." Ethan stepped in front of her, his voice shaking but strong. "If you take her, you'll have to go through me." The official's gaze turned sharp. "You do not understand, human. This is larger than you. She belongs to her people." Liara's voice rang out, clear and unwavering. "No, I belong where my heart has chosen. And it has chosen him." The room went silent. Even the officials seemed shaken by her words. For the Vayari, to claim belonging to another being was no small thing. It was a vow, a severing of ties from the collective. Ethan felt tears sting his eyes as he heard her say it. He had always feared she would be forced away, that love would be crushed under rules and duty. But in that moment, Liara stood against her entire world. For him. The officials stepped forward, but Liara moved in front of Ethan now, placing herself as a shield. "If you punish him," she said, her voice low but strong, "you will prove everything I have learned about humans is true. That love is the most powerful thing in existence. And you will not erase that lesson from me." Ethan's heart pounded as he placed his hand on her shoulder. "We're not afraid of you," he whispered, more to her than to them. The officials paused. They had expected fear, submission, compliance. What they saw instead was defiance built not from anger but from devotion. Two beings from different worlds standing as one. After a long silence, one of the officials spoke, his voice quieter now. "Then you are no longer part of the program, Liara. You are no longer welcome among the Vayari. This bond is your exile." Liara lifted her chin, her hand tightening around Ethan's. "Then so be it. I will not trade truth for belonging." With that, the officials turned and left, their footsteps echoing down the hall. Outside, the great ship rose into the sky and vanished, leaving behind only silence. Ethan closed the door slowly, his hand still trembling. The weight of what just happened pressed down on him. Liara had lost her home, her people, her place in the galaxy. All for him. He turned to her, guilt heavy in his chest. "Liara, I'm so sorry. You gave up everything because of me." But she only stepped closer, pressing her cool hand gently to his cheek. "Not because of you. Because of us. Do not carry this as loss, Ethan. Carry it as choice." Choice." His throat tightened, tears threatening. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close, feeling the hum of her chest against his own racing heartbeat. For the first time, she let her head rest fully against him, her breath slow, her voice soft. "Now I know. Love is not balance. It is not safety. It is giving yourself even if it means breaking. And I would break 1,000 times for this." Ethan closed his eyes, holding her tighter. "And I'd do the same."